Okay, welcome to season 3, episode 1 of Experience This. Here with my co-hosts, Laurie and Bruce. How are you guys doing?
Good. Happy New Year, everyone.
Happy 2025, season 3. Pretty cool.
All right. So, of course, we have to do predictions, don't we? Because it's the start of the new year and end of last year and start of a new year is all about predictions and looking back and looking forward and everything else. So we haven't really planned, we haven't coordinated this, I don't think, except for we sort of know where each other's heads are at a little bit somewhat, but we haven't coordinated this. So we're each going to come up with 3 predictions, I believe, for the year 2025. And we're going to have a discussion around them. So have you guys each got your 3 predictions ready?
So I think these are predictions, just to clarify, right, Christian? These are predictions that we've sort of found. We've, in our various, searches, whether it be Focusrite or whomever, Travel Tech Essentialist, etc. So these are not our predictions. These are predictions that we've seen, and we're essentially saying this is one of our favorites. Is that
Yeah,
right?
That's not how I have done it for my 3. I know that we talked about that, but
well, that's also a good thing. Maybe we've all approached it from a different angle, and you can either defend your prediction as yours and stand by it and put money down, or you can say, "Yeah, I don't really know what I'm talking about. I just copy these from somebody else's list." Either is
or I
fine.
can say something and you guys can say, "Oh, I saw that on someone else's list," and you'd
Okay.
probably be right.
Cool.
Right?
So
Yeah.
it'll be
Yeah.
a hybrid approach.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's start with it's always good to beat up on you on yours, Bruce, more than anybody. So let's start with your number 1, your top pick.
Sure. And I just want to say that the show we just dropped was our trends from 2024. And that was more of a recap of what we saw in 24, not forward-looking trends necessarily. This is more, as you said, Christian, more of our predictions. I think my first, and why I was happy to go first, I'm happy to go first, it's so obvious, and it's voice. This is the year we're really going to see the transition from text to voice through the use of AI. And all of us, like, I don't use Siri. I've never liked Siri. She was never my friend. And I'm planning on AI giving me communication tools so that when I want to do whatever I need to do, I can do it via voice and not having to type everything. So that's my number 1.
I think
So
a lot of sense.
yeah, I like that. Are you going to project that though, and what that means? It's fine just saying voice, but what does that mean for the industry or to our lives, other than we're going to be talking to our phone instead of typing into it more?
Well, I think it just makes us a lot more efficient and effective. We can plan things while we're driving, while we're walking. We can have, just use our phone, or as you love to talk about, and that I'm sure we're going to get into, our AI agent in a much more dynamic way than having to text back and forth, but to really speak to it. And hopefully it's going to provide us with answers that we don't expect. And it is very different than where Siri says, if I say, "Oh, give me a restaurant in the neighborhood," and Siri gives me a list of restaurants, like, that doesn't help me, but make it conversational. So it's the conversational side that I think is really going to impact us. And then, of course, that gets into our world of travel, where we haven't talked about search yet, but it's part of search, right? Where you'll be searching by voice and be able to be more conversational in everything search.
Yeah, I think once people start having conversations with AI, their AI agent, and they start getting comfortable with I love it personally. I think it's like when I'm out taking a walk, when I chat a lot to my AI agent or whomever. I don't know how to say it. Still seems weird to say that, but I can't, it's amazing, but you just have to, I think it really is the trick for me anyway, is about actually allowing yourself to get into that conversation, the back and forth, and keep asking the questions. And as that everybody, you read about it all the time, the more that you fine tune your questions and your responses, and then that just becomes a better experience and better output, I suppose. I really
Lori,
enjoy
give
it.
an example, like which tools that you really have found most useful
Well,
and
most
how
of
you
it,
use them.
it's ChatGPT, right?
ChatGPT.
That's what I use predominantly, but I have recently decided that I need to be using more than just ChatGPT. I need to use at least one other LLM, um, because, well, I think it was a recent LinkedIn post that I saw that made me realize that I'm missing the boat by not checking out Perplexity and Google Gemini and some of the other LLMs, because they might be better at certain things than ChatGPT. But that's what I use right now when I have a conversation with my GPT.
Yeah, it's crazy to think, isn't it? When it becomes really normal. It's like when you first get in an autonomous vehicle. For me, it took about 30 seconds, and it's just normal, and it's no big deal anymore. I think it's like the same with the voice. It quickly becomes normal. But if I said this to you 2.2 years ago, that we're going to be in a situation where you could just talk to your phone and it's going to talk back in a voice that sounds human and talk in complete sense about any subject, it wasn't even something we would ever talk about 2 years ago. It wasn't on the horizon, and here we are, and it's just part of our everyday
Yeah.
lives. I think as far as applying it, I like the destination stuff. I've always liked the in destination sort of tour guide space. I'm not saying it's going to take over from tour guides, but just that companion from walking around asking questions, how old's this bridge? Tell us a story about this palace, all that kind of stuff. It's really good and easy for that today. It's hard to make a product out of that, I think. I think people are finding, but that's part of tourism, right? Walking around just finding information.
Well, and then we have businesses that have basically taken that and, turned it into something, right? So what is the business I'm thinking about that you just spoke with? Oh my goodness.
I wonder.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
obviously they're doing pretty much that for the most,
Hmm.
yeah.
Cool. I like the voice. I think that's it's coming. I've heard people say, oh, it's not happening because everything happens in Asia first and voice doesn't happen in Asia. I don't think that's a fair comparison. They didn't get LLMs in Asia ahead of us, so I don't think they know quite yet that. I think this time voice will happen in a big way. Um, Good, Bruce. We didn't beat up on you at all. That's disappointing. Laurie, have you got what's your top pick?
Yeah, so I didn't create this. This was not my prediction necessarily, but as soon as I saw this, it resonated with me, and I think it's very accurate. Um, that the emotional economy is edging out the experience economy. So the experience economy, as we all know, is, that's the idea of going out there and enjoying experiences. And now travel has become experiential, and people are letting experiences drive their decision making, and that experiences are a part of life that we now recognize the value of. Whereas the emotional economy is about connection. It's about connection. It's about the way something makes you feel. This could be related to wellness. It can be related to even live tourism to some degree, as being part of a community of something, like you're going all together to see the night sky, and you want to be in a group of people experiencing the eclipse together, or even concerts and things like that to some degree, because you're sort of, Swifties are all gathering in the same space. You think about things like communities, local communities, and the way that people want to give back, and they want to experience and have a connection with locals. And so I feel as though it's getting to be more and more common that now there's a concentration on the way people feel, what resonates with them, what are they taking away, how does that improve their life? And so I think that's actually going to become an even hotter sort of, I don't know, what would you call it, but more of an approach than just experience economy. So that's something I heard, and I thought I think it's right.
Bruce, what do you think?
I have a few thoughts around that. Do you remember where you heard that? I mean, what your source
Yep.
of that
It was
is?
from Travel Weekly. And this is for anybody that doesn't know, it's a media company, been around a very long time. Mostly they are focused on addressing travel advisors. And this happened to be a podcast that had sort of the 25 predictions for the new year. And I think the host were, let's see, Emma Weissman is her name, and Jamie Bishada, I believe. Um, yeah, that was one
Okay,
that I,
yeah. I mean, Travel Weekly is part of North Star, very traditional
yeah, very
travel
traditional.
trade publication. I know them quite well. And that makes a ton of sense. I mean, I don't know if I would go as far as calling it the emotional economy personally. But it has,
Well, no, I guess what they do call it. Sorry, Bruce. I just wanted to check
what were
with
you
you.
gonna say?
I was thinking it was the emotion economy, but I think it's actually the emotional economy.
Right. I mean, I certainly totally agree that there is a slice of the travel industry that is now all about community, people traveling for a purpose. Like you said, let's all go check out the eclipse, and we saw what happened with that. Or go to a concert, or travel as a community, or meet up as a community. And live tourism. I mean, Skip named that as one of the mega trends for the year. And absolutely, if you just look at the numbers and the data and people traveling for any kind of live tourism, and that's a pretty big scale. So I totally agree with that. And that's going to be something that's going to continue to grow this year and in the future, because people want to be with people. We saw how much the pandemic changed that when people realized what they were missing. But I want to push back on one thing about I've been really trying to dig in hard on what is the experience economy. And I don't mean destination experiences like we talk about every day, but just in general, the experience economy, and the theories around that started by Joe Pine and Gilmore on their book they wrote over 30 years ago about how the experience economy is the economy we live in today for how we can enjoy experiences differently. And companies need to figure out how to give us more what they call time well spent when we are with that company. And that's everything from Starbucks adding value to a tiny cup of coffee to us adding value to our experiences. The next stage that Joe Pine is writing about now is the transformational economy, or the transformation economy. And I'd love to talk, maybe that's a different show, and maybe we even get Joe Pine on the show. Because I think this idea that you have, Lori, of the emotional economy fits in between those two. Like,
Yeah, I agree.
between that transition from experience economy to transformation economy, the emotional economy kind of lives in between that. Transformation economy means you do something and you come out transformed. And
Well,
that
it
could
may
be, I go and see the eclipse. Sorry, I go see the eclipse with thousands of people, and I come home transformed from that. I mean, I could totally see that.
well, if you're so maybe the emotional economy doesn't live between it. Maybe it is afterwards, right? Because if you've gone through a transformation, now how does that make you feel? Right? So maybe that's the actual
And how
next.
do I keep doing it? Right? Like, okay, wow, that transformed me. Now I want to do more of that and have that emotion again and again, for example. So, there's a relationship there that would be really interesting to explore for sure. Yeah.
Christian, any
Yeah, well, I think it's a good trend. I'm gonna just push back a little bit, and I think it's a little bit like the argument that Bruce claims there's data on, which I don't think he has any data, but the one that people travel for the experience and then pick the location. I think there's a bit of this has always been around, and it's just that we're talking about it now. And I think that happens with a lot of these trends, right? Because everyone's forced to do these trends every year and come up with something. And I think a lot of times we kind of make up a trend which has been there for life because we're humans and we've always traveled this way. It's just that we haven't thought about it. This is like the why, right? This is like why we travel. But I think there was a why we traveled 50 years ago as well. And there was a why we traveled 150 years ago. And it's just now people are more in touch with this stuff. So now that we're talking about it, whereas,
Except,
yeah,
Christian, that I mean, I totally understand what you're saying. And in some ways, I agree with you. I think we do put a name to things to put a name to things. And partially that's because we're talking about things now more than we ever talked about things before, right? I mean, we just talked about podcast offline and the growth in podcasts. So people are talking about things. But on top of that, there didn't used to be a way of understanding what you did when you got there the way there is now. So there's a way of booking it, there's a way of researching it. We didn't know necessarily all of the reasons why we wanted to go somewhere. We knew that we wanted to go to Spain because we heard it was cool, but we didn't necessarily know exactly what we wanted to do when we got there without sitting down and opening up your, Let's Go Europe book and then eventually finding a few of the things that you can do in Spain. So even though, to your point, yeah, people, of course, they've always wanted to travel to experience the destination. But now that they know the things that are available to them when they get there, now they have an even bigger reason to want to go. So I actually believe that that is true, that people are now traveling more because of the things they know they can do when they get there. And it's not just about the country or the place or whatever that that they've heard about. So I don't know. That's my feeling on
I
that.
think those two things can both be true. Um, I'll do a quick one to move us along because we've already discussed this. So I'm going to talk about being the year of the discussion of the intermediaries. So we've never really challenged, is there a place in the market for the OTA and Google? And I think this is the year that we're really going to open up and there's going to be just a lot more discussions and see what is the future of those intermediaries and you can't really say monopoly. Well, Google's having a monopoly, OTA's certainly not monopoly, but we're going to question their place in the market and if they've got long-term future, which I'm sure they will, but I don't think they have in their current position. So that's my sort of prediction for the year, that there'll be a lot more discussion around that. I don't think it's going to revolutionize. Google's not going to go from 90 to 50%, but they're going to drop a lot. And the OTAs, I don't know if they're going to drop this year, but they're going to start worrying about their position in the market. And we already discussed this on a whole podcast. So unless you got any quick comments, we'll move to Bruce's
Well, just
second.
my quick comment on that is it's, frankly, kind of a lame prediction. Like, oh, something we're going to discuss. Like, okay, we'll discuss it whenever we want to discuss some intermediaries, the power of OTAs. Obviously Google, and are they going to lose search, market share of search? That alone could be a whole discussion, sure. But saying a discussion is a prediction versus all the predictions that you have in your head of what is really going to happen, I don't know. I expected
Well,
more.
maybe it's a bit of a soft way of saying this is my prediction, but I'm not sure it's going to happen in 2025. So this is my long-term
My
prediction.
prediction comes with a grain of salt. Take it with a
Yeah,
grain of salt.
yeah. So fair comment, Bruce. So on that note, you've got a solid prediction for 2025 as your number two.
Yeah, I like this one. And I played around a little bit with it over the holidays here. I think this is a year that more and more people, unlike will create their own agent, because I think there's still a lot of other things that have to happen for that to happen. But will create their own GPT. I think that OpenAI has really given us the ability to do that. I'm sure other companies, if they already have as well, then you probably know more about that, or will soon. But to be able to create your own custom GPT that can then do things for you and repeat tasks. So I'm going to call 2025 the year that people start creating their own GPTs.
So people or company, I mean, people, yes, companies are going to, more and more companies will start creating, I think, AI agents that will start to do, you know, some significant work. Personalization obviously is one of them, and efficiencies and things like that. But I think companies will start creating their own AI agents. That's pretty much the same thing, right? I mean, isn't it,
I
Christian?
don't know, and I'd love to hear Christian
AI
tell us
agent?
the difference between a custom GPT and an agent. Because I don't think they're exactly the same, and I think it's worth talking about.
Hmm.
Well, I think it's almost impossible now to define an agent. An agent's just so broad, right? A custom GPT is an agent. ChatGPT is an agent now. Your voice, ChatGPT is an agent. She or he remembers everything you say, and that's in effect your agent. It can go off and search. Doesn't quite do tasks yet, but it can create docs and all kinds of stuff. And it's so that's already an agent. An agent is just it's just an AI that does a task for you, right? That's the broadest definition. That task could be go and build a car, or it could be go and search for who won the Warriors game last night. They're both versions of an agent. So I think that's going to continue to be a fuzzy space. And I don't think we're going to wake up and say, hey, great, I've got an agent now. It's just all different variations of what the AI does.
So how do you
If that
compare that to the custom GPT that
custom
Chat
GPT is an
GPT is now
agent.
allowing us to build?
Yeah, custom GPT is an agent. It's custom GPT is no different to your voice chat GPT today, really. It's something it's you've given it instructions on what you want to be talking about and what and a bit about your life, but so does your voice chat GPT. You're given that instructions every time you talk to it because it remembers what you've discussed. So they're the same thing, really.
Hmm.
I guess the difference is when it goes off and does actual tasks, when you could say, send an email from my work email to this partner and tell them that here are our new rates for the year. That becomes a little bit of a bigger step, but we're really close to that as well. And I'm sure companies will have that. Those type send an email is a silly one because you can actually just write an email just as quickly, but there'll be tasks like that that will be more commonplace. I think that maybe part of Google and part of Microsoft first.
I'm gonna just, while we're talking to, I just want to understand this a little bit better, but go ahead, keep going, guys.
Okay.
Um, Laurie, you ready with your number two?
Yes. I mean, this is kind of a two-part, but not really. It's really part of the same thing to some degree. I think that this year there's going to be a significant rise in B2B travel in general, and companies investing in growing that space. And the way that they're going to grow it is by building their travel advisor network. I think the travel advisor piece of travel is going to grow significantly this year. What does that mean? I don't know. I don't have a number. I think that major organizations like Virtuoso and American Express are developing AI tools that will allow their agents to really be extremely efficient and utilize all of the real-time data and things that we talk about when we look at what is AI going to do for travel and travel planning. But they're also going to have that personal approach to connecting with a customer, being able to relate to them, et cetera. So I feel like there's going to be this effort to kind of combine the technology, the AI technology specifically, with the human touch. And the perfect, really the perfect way to do that is by utilizing a travel advisor. And these big companies are already starting to utilize AI and do exactly that. Like Flight Center is doing it, Virtuoso is doing it, American Express is doing it. I think the smaller ones are going to have more challenges with that because they won't have the money to put into the technology right now. But I do feel like we're going to see a big push towards travel advisors in this space, or continued growth. I think when people they still want that human touch, they're going to be going to travel advisors, but also their travel advisor is going to have the ability to utilize AI to unlock some of that opportunity for discovery that they might have done if they were just doing it themselves. So I feel like it's a combination there. And then, as I said, I believe that there will be a continued focus for some of these bigger OTAs on growing their B2B space. And obviously, travel advisor growth is a big part of that. So it really kind of all goes hand in hand.
Bruce?
Well, I think what Lori said is really interesting and important and related to what you're talking about earlier, Christian, that, OTAs might start to have less presence or less importance. And Lori's talking about travel advisors as one group of people who are still kind of out there generating a lot of business, and there's a lot of B2B effort to work with them. Well, who's going to get their business and work with them? It's going to be the intermediaries with the most money that are going to win, because they're going to use that money on engineering to get AI to work, to create tools for advisors. So let's just say Expedia loses some of their market share because your AI agents are bypassing Expedia. Expedia is going to pivot and be able to provide tools for advisors or whoever they decide to generate more revenue in some other way. Because they have the smarts, they've got the brand, they've got the tools, and they've got the cash to do it. And I think that's where Lori's going, is that if B2B is going to continue to become a bigger part of our industry, then I still think the big guys are the ones that are going to go out there and earn that B2B business.
Yeah, I mean, Expedia already has this available, right? They have a travel agent program. It's a very significant piece of their business. Viator already has a travel agent program. It's also a significant piece of their business.
And they'll
So
just continue to get better at it, right?
they'll continue to get better, and they'll offer the tools that they have available to, to drive that further. But it will offer, I guess what I'm saying is, it will offer an option to the consumer who still doesn't necessarily feel comfortable maybe booking a trip themselves, or utilizing some of the tools that will become available or are available. I think this will probably be more the case with higher value tours or travel, things that cost a lot of money, things that are more luxury minded, things that are more complicated. Obviously, things that are easy to book, probably people will just continue to book them online the way they are doing right now. So, but anyway.
So I'll agree with that somewhat. I'll agree there's an adoption curve with any technology, and AI is no exception to that. And the tools available far surpass the humans that are using them. And I'm just talking about just plain old ChatGPT, using that for travel planning is probably the best travel tool we've ever had, but some people don't use it. So if a travel agent did nothing but use ChatGPT to do their research and then relay that and package it nicely back to the customer, they've got themselves a nice little, almost like an arbitrage gap there, where they can add a ton of value really quickly, and they could probably serve 10 times more customers than they could 2 years ago. And yes, if those tools are sitting there on an OTA so they can easily book and make commission and get commission payments, then that seems to be a decent place for them to sit for the time being.
Well,
The part Bruce said about, well, the part you said about the OTAs keep producing these tools. What tools are they producing other than allow me to book something to get some commission? What else are they going to offer me past that? So I think it's a good short term, but I don't really need a tool. I just need someone to be able to pay me commission. I don't need Expedia's tool to book a hotel. I just
No,
need a tool to book a hotel.
I don't think it's that Christian. I think it's whether they develop the tools that are more in line with things people will expect when they're using AI. Things like personalization, things like, real-time data, dynamic pricing, all of those things are going to be things that they need to get better at, that they need to, I'm not saying the tools they have now are going to be acceptable. I'm saying that the big companies that are wanting to be very relative in this, or relevant, excuse me, in this space will have to have they'll have to adapt. Um, that's what I think. I don't think it's just more of the same. I think it's actually a combination of utilizing AI tools and the human approach.
Yeah, I feel like, Christian, you just said something about tools that OTAs could create to enable advisors. And then you went back and said, but they're not doing it. I'm really confused. Like you went both ways. Whereas what I think an OTA can and should and will do is take their amazing amount of data, including all the booking capability. I mean, think about when you do a hotel search, for example. If you have a travel advisor who understands the client, who then is given a tool, AI powered, that can search so much more efficiently, effectively, and book, and get that whole process from a 15, 20-minute process down to a 1-minute process by using the Expedia AI travel advisor tool, whatever that looks like. That's a win for everybody, for the customer, agent, and the Expedia, right? And I think that's where, Lori, you were going with your prediction of what's coming next, a better B2B environment. And I believe you're talking about for advisors. Is that when you say B2B? I mean, there's a lot of B2B out there. Do you mean?
Yeah, no, yeah, I'm thinking about travel advisors mostly at this point.
And OTAs and other wholesalers, whoever they might be in the future, should be able to provide AI tools that a travel advisor is never going to get on their own.
I actually think we need to have somebody on from one of these bigger companies that can tell us exactly what they're doing and what their expectations are. So I feel like that's a show we should
You mean
have.
like an OTA or like a
I
virtuoso
mean,
type?
like somebody from Virtuoso.
Like a virtuoso. Okay, well, let's do that.
Whatever. Yeah, I feel like that would be a good, because obviously with people now booking experiences more, it doesn't matter if it's an OTA or if it's, Google or if it's a travel advisor. I mean, experiences are an important part of all of this ecosystem now. So this pertains to our audience, I think.
Well, let's get somebody on. Let's have them explain the tools that they're using that are better than just using ChatGPT, because I don't think they exist. And let's have them explain what all this data that Bruce is talking about means, because I got no idea what data Expedia has that I don't have.
Really? You have as much data about every hotel in New York City as Expedia has.
Yeah, well, I don't. My ChatGPT does.
I don't
100%.
think it's about the hotels. It's about the customer. It's about the customer. That's the data that they have, or that, I mean, and they do have it if the customer is a loyal Expedia customer.
Well,
But
that's a whole nother thing,
but
right?
to add to that, there's also data they can get, right? Data that is going to feed into what they already have that will only give them a better. Anyway, we could go on and on about that one.
I mean, I just know, Christian, I've been looking for a place in Madrid, an Airbnb, and I've never been to Madrid. It's freaking hard to figure out where I want to stay that's going to be next to the train that goes to Fitur and it's in a cool neighborhood so I can hang out. And, there's not an easy way to do that on a site that's as user friendly as an Airbnb. I have to assume that if I had, maybe it's just I don't know how to program an agent like you do, but I have to assume that if there was AI helping me with my exploration, I would go from my 10 days of research for an Airbnb down to 10 minutes or less, right?
Well, what Bruce, if you I can help you with that actually. So just
You could be
think
my
about it. As a
my
side
my
note,
human
I have
agent.
somebody that works in my team that will tell you in a minute what neighborhood to stay in. That's a
Yeah,
team.
I'm not saying that AI is a better experience for booking a hotel or finding neighborhoods or finding the hotel than an OTA is today. I don't think it is, but it has more data because the AI has all of Expedia's data and all of Booking's data and the customer data. Fine if you're if you're loyal Expedia. I don't think that helps. I think that's something people talk about. We've got all this customer data. I think we discussed this before. I think it's worth zero. I think my previous booking pattern outside of business travel is worth about zero for the next. I can tell the AI my preferences in about 10 seconds, and that's worth more than 10 years of booking data for me as a customer.
I don't
Um,
disagree with that. Although I still go back to the data that you say AI has versus an OTA or what have you, and it's the organization of that data, including the data points I want, like price and where the location is. I mean, AI is not popping data out that way yet. It's not organizing. It doesn't have the UI UX that an OTA
yeah.
is.
So yeah, that's fine. If UX is part of the data, then there's some benefit there. But I just think data is another one of those things people say on stages, and actually, a lot of people don't know what it means, and they don't have any evidence to support that data is worth anything anymore when AI has all the data. But we I'm still on my number two. I'll do a quick one, and then we'll go a big finale with
Do a
everyone's number
really good
three.
one this time.
So I think this is the year people are going to be talking about um, video.
Ah, that is not a prediction. Everyone knows that.
That's a trend from last year, like
Yeah,
and the
it's
year
terrible, isn't it?
before, and the year before. I think that our audience expects a lot more out of you, Christian.
I've got a weird one for number three. So I'm just going to go for video because I want to move it along to yours. But we've obviously got the TikTok decision coming up in a couple of weeks. I don't know which way that's going to
Well,
go. That's going to be
predict it. Come on, man. Like, what's going to happen with that decision? And is it different because of Trump versus Biden? Uh,
There's no way it happen.
This is an example of how screwed up we are as a people now. Is that when Trump said he was going to ban it, when it was that 6 years ago, the whole world's up in arms, and he can't do that, and freedom of speech, and all this, that, and everything
And now they're
else.
all, everyone's like, no, don't
And
ban
yeah, and now Biden signed off on it, and Congress obviously banned it, and so did the Senate. All of Congress did. And now Trump's the one that's going to save it. For what reason? He's got no particular reason to save it. Nothing's changed over 6 years ago. It's probably got more dangerous than it ever was. But he wants to be the man because he thinks he won the young person's vote. Nobody's told him he didn't, but he thinks he won it by 43% for some reason. Um, so I think he's going to try and save it. But the same arguments he had for banning it 6 years ago are still there. They're probably worse than they were. But
what's your
I
prediction? When will TikTok be banned? Yes or no?
I think it will, but I think it gets kicked down the road for a bit. I'm not sure what the Supreme Court can do or will do. I don't know if they have to step in or if he's going to have any power. I've not been following it closely enough, but I think it'll get kicked down the road a little bit because that's what these things seem to happen. I think it has to get either they do some weird deal where they say they're going to move the servers here and we can control it or something, or they're going to end up selling it. I don't think it's going to end up under ByteDance in a year from now.
Doesn't Elon just buy it for cash?
Possibly, yeah. The other part of video, I think it's going to be interesting because back to AI, the videos now that you can make. I just watched a cat making a meal yesterday for like 20 seconds, and it
cat
was
making a meal. Is that what
cat.
you just
It
said?
was chopping the food, and it was stirring the food, and it was eating pasta, and it made pasta, and you could not tell that was not a cat making food, making a meal. And that's where we're at. We can just make the ultimate fake video, and this is going to be the year where I saw a post last week, and it said in the future we're going to start seeing a lot more AI content, and then we're going to stop seeing a lot of AI content, meaning that there's going to be a proliferation of this stuff and it's going to be obvious still for a bit, but then pretty soon we're just never going to know the difference. And I think this is the year with text, clearly we don't know the difference and we haven't done for a year or more. But this is the year video, we just don't know what's real and what's not.
Yeah, it is interesting because, you know, a lot of people use AI to write their LinkedIn post, for instance. And it seems like it's almost completely obvious that if you don't manipulate it at least a little bit, it's very obvious that it's been written by AI. But to your point, it's only going to get better and better. And yeah, it'll be interesting. And that's scary to me. That's scary that you're not going to be able to tell the difference between. And then that goes back to our conversation about Nexus, Christian.
Yeah,
An aspect of it all.
yeah. All right, sorry for disappointing you twice, Bruce. My third one you're going to hate. What's your third one, Bruce?
Before I do that, I want to share my screen for a second because you had me curious about the difference between an AI agent and a custom GPT, and you know what my thought was, and I didn't get any really good feedback from either of you about the differences. So I wanted to ask ChatGPT the difference. So you can see my screen, yeah? Is that big
Yeah.
enough? I don't know if anything sticks out at you here that would say something different than what you were talking about. But in my mind, a custom GPT is something that we're going to create and use over and over and over again for a specific task. And it will continue to get better and we can continue to modify it. So it will continue to do better at that task. Versus an AI agent is going to be a more general agent that will continue to do things for you. Does that make sense? Do you agree, disagree? Is there anything on here that
Yeah,
you...
that's fine. But there's also discussion around, are we going to have one AI agent or multiple?
Yeah.
You know, there's going to be specialty AI agents. There'll be one that's spent a lot of time researching and indexing and creating UX, if you like, is a good example of that for travel and for destinations. So your AI agent may talk to that agent because that agent's already done the work. So in that respect, it's all a bit fuzzy and it's all a bit of a gray area. When does one become the
So yesterday
other?
I wanted to I'll play around with ideas to create different events for Arrival. They usually don't come to fruition. Once in a while they do, whether they're what I call a pop-up event, or maybe it's a half day within a bigger Arrival event or whatever. So I created this custom GPT that's the Arrival Event Innovator is the name that we came up with together. And now I have a custom GPT that knows the structure and what I want to do when it's time to create a new event, for example. And I'm going to play with that and see how that works. And I think that's going to be different than an agent. So that's what I'm putting out there as one of my top predictions is using custom GPTs. I think it's very, very early, but to me, it's a different topic than the AI agent discussion, basically. So there you have it.
Yeah, but my point is if you end up with one agent, which we may end up with one agent. If you end up with one agent, then your agent will just talk to that custom GPT. You're going to say, okay, right now I'm talking about where to buy a coffee. It might just go to Google Maps, or it might go to a coffee agent which somebody's built. And now you're going to say, let me talk about Arrival. It's going to say, oh, the best place for me to use that is this other AI agent, which is a custom GPT. So it's going to find the other agents which have already done the work for that subject. You won't necessarily know that because you'll just talk to your phone. And maybe
I
you'll
think
have one agent
that's
on your
been a
phone
topic
and
of
it will go behind
discussion,
the
right? Like
scenes.
a meta agent. I remember that came up in one of the LinkedIn discussions out there that people are talking about. So we'll see. We'll see. We still don't know, about how the agents will work. I just think a custom GPT is different than an agent.
Yeah.
That's my prediction for 25.
On to number 3.
On the number 3. Speaking of agents, speaking of the topic of personalization that comes up all the time related to agents. How the hell does your agent know who you are? You just said, Christian, all of my past travel history doesn't really give my agent, my travel agent, enough information to help me plan my travel, book my travel, etc. I'd rather just say for this trip, I'm going to an event. I'm going, I'm going to do some leisure before, a little bit of leisure after. The event's in London, blah, blah, blah. Now plan my trip. Like, I believe that's what you think right now in terms of personalization, which means not a lot. Like let me just tell it and then it'll personalize. And I agree at this point, and I believe everyone's chasing the holy grail of personalization. So here's a crazy prediction, and it might not happen in 25, might not happen ever, but I think someone who's really going to go for this, whether it's a booking.com or a Facebook or Apple, one of the big guys with a stash of cash is going to buy Salesforce, and they're going to implement Salesforce into their entire ecosystem so that they can start to get to that actual passenger record that needs to happen for personalization. So that whether I'm booking on Expedia, Kayak Booking, Get Your Guide, UnitedAirlines.com, it doesn't matter. I'm still Bruce Rosard. And because this company has integrated everything they know about me, and it's in a true CRM, and so I'm using Salesforce as the example of the best CRM in the world, they will be able to start creating who I am, and then start to personalize from there.
I'm not buying that Salesforce thing at all, because I use Salesforce all the time and I don't see the information that's in there being something that's going to be useful for the purpose that you're talking about. The only way it would be useful is if the information that was in Salesforce records was related to, where do I travel and what do I want to do and what's my gateway.
So
and
yes, I mean, Salesforce today is a sales CRM. So
yeah,
you're 100% right. I buy that. Let's
yeah.
take out the sales part of it, but the CRM. So it's the CRM piece that I don't think any travel company is really leveraging as well. So maybe I'm misguiding this with thinking about it as Salesforce versus CRM.com for whatever, right? That to me is the missing link. Is
For a
CRM.
CRM that has all that, there isn't like this grand CRM that's going to have all of that information, Bruce. I mean, there are certain companies that might have information on certain customers that they work with, again, going back to some of the bigger travel agencies or corporate agencies or whatever, or even, businesses that have faithful or loyal customers. But what CRM is going to have that kind of information you're talking about right now?
The one that gets built.
So someone's going to
But yeah, I think it's nonsense. Every OTA has a CRM, right? They've built their own CRM. CRMs are simple things. They're just a simple database table, which isn't even useful anymore. It's just a text. All you need now is a customer record, a customer ID, and a bunch of text. You don't even need it structured in terms of dates and themes or anything. You just need a block of text to find out my travel history. So every OTA already has that of everything I've ever booked with them, and I still argue that it's worthless. I'm not arguing that personalization is worthless because they haven't got the information. I'm arguing even if they have all the information, it's still not worth anything versus 10 seconds of me talking about my next trip. I just don't think this historic data is worth anything now that we can talk to a computer and tell it what my needs are for this next trip.
Yeah, again, I think I got off the rails by talking Salesforce versus the concept of CRM, which I do think is more important than either of you right now, but it's worthy of discussion for sure. But now you're saying, really, Christian, you've said it a few times, you don't believe in personalization. So if you don't, then what are all these companies that are working on personalization strategies going to do? I mean, is it worthless? Did he lock up? Or
Yes.
did I stump him?
No, he locked up, but it's sitting on this face that is exactly the way you can imagine Christian thinking about it. So actually, it really locked up at the right time, Christian. You don't even have to say a word.
Basically, he's saying it's worthless.
Can you do your last sentence again, Bruce?
Are you saying personalization is worthless? So the companies chasing it are just throwing millions away?
I'm saying that personalization, first of all, personalization means two things to different people. That's what I'm realizing. Some people think it means personal service, and they use the same word to talk about personal service. I think we all have the same definition of personalization, which is catering choice, catering, curating choices for you personally. Um, I think it's worthless when it comes to historic booking data. I think it's absolutely relevant if you get if you get my preferences for this next trip. So for my next trip, for your trip to Madrid, you are going to go to a conference in this location. You are going to be there for 4 days. You are traveling alone or with family. That's, of course, that's important. That's critical. But using any historic booking data that you've got to book that trip, I don't think is going to be valuable more than you giving it 10 seconds of current personalization preference.
Well,
I
there's
think you're
personas. Do you think personas are worthwhile?
Yeah, broadly, if you can differentiate the personas. But again, I can give you my persona for this trip in 10 seconds, right? My personas, there also aren't four personas, or there
Right.
aren't
No,
10
there's a lot.
personas.
Right. Yeah.
It's infinite. My last persona was slightly different because I'm a bit more tired this trip.
Yeah. Right. There's personas and then there's your current state,
Yeah.
basically. Yeah. And those are, they are infinite. I
when it
agree with
comes to
that. But there's
corporate
also
travel,
shortcuts.
it's
Tell
more
people.
effective,
What,
you know, like
what's
corporate
that, Lori?
travel.
I'm sorry. Go
I
ahead.
think when it comes to corporate travel, it's more effective because then,
Hmm.
you are looking at patterns of behavior that you probably don't have as much of with leisure travel. I don't know, that's,
Yep.
yeah.
Okay. So I'm
Uh,
panned on, I guess I was 2 for 3. Okay.
Well, nobody gave you two for the first two, but maybe you were.
You did.
I gave you one, I think. Maybe I gave you two.
Oh no, you didn't give me the create your own GPT either. All right, I got one
No,
out of
one,
3
one
that
for
I got
three. It's like
Christian's credit for, and Lori, I think also, but both of you gave me 1 out of 3. So Lori has
and my next prediction is that Christian is going to get better Wi-Fi in 2025. I think that could be a reality. What's your take on that, Christian?
I'd love to. I think I need to move closer to over there. It's the problem. I'm in the wrong place in the house. I've put my office in the wrong room.
I don't really have a prediction. No, it's not my own. I had a lot of fun with Mauricio's Travel Tech Essentialist 25 predictions. I thought that was really creative. And there's one in here that I think is highly likely. And it is that in 25, we're going to see the first travel company to eliminate traditional customer service, replacing it with AI, reducing the cost by 85%, achieving less than 1% escalation rate. So I think that the 1% escalation rate is probably overly optimistic. I feel like that's probably a little bit too rosy. I do think there is going to be a travel company that will eliminate traditional CS and replace with AI exclusively. And I think that it is a hybrid approach is probably the better solution so that, because I think the travel space is it's still fairly complicated. And so you have to have a way of escalating things to a human. But I do believe that this particular prediction that he had is one that is going to happen.
like what scale of company are you thinking?
Well, I'm thinking it's going to be, it has to be a company that can afford to do it because it's going to cost money. And it has to be, so you have to be looking at medium to large size businesses that would put it into play, because I don't think the smaller ones can afford to do it. And I think it will take a period of time where the company will start to see its cost diminish, of course. So it isn't like the first year they're going to see an 85%, improvement in cost, or reduction in cost. I think that's going to take time over a period of years. But I do think we're going to see a company that will do this.
What would you call when you call a call center and you get their, I would AI phone, press 1 for this and press 2 for that and press 3 for this. Then you press 3 and then the phone tree. Is that AI?
Well, if the whole well, it could be, and in the whole experience would have to be completely managed by an AI agent. So it wouldn't be like press this one to get our customer service and then you keep pressing 0 and you finally get escalated to a real person. It wouldn't actually work that way because we're saying it's a full solution. So it would
You
be
wouldn't always have, you said hybrid, you wouldn't always have a kick out, like, please
well,
connect me to a real
that's what I'm
person.
saying, is that I think there does need to be a hybrid approach. I don't actually think that this particular prediction that Mauricio has, where it's completely managed by AI, is necessarily a good one. I think there does need to be an escalation to a human available, but he's saying, I think, that he expects it to be fully AI.
Right. But you're not, because you're saying hybrid.
I'm saying I think it has to be hybrid.
And I'm just wondering how this is that different than a phone tree, other than it's chat.
Well, if it
Although
goes
if it's
fully AI,
voice instead of chat, then it's now we're back to voice.
well, it depends upon where the phone tree gets you to, right? So you can keep on pressing the buttons, but what answers are you getting? And are you eventually getting all the answers that
So
you
the
want?
phone tree doesn't get you the customized type of answer that you're saying the AI can. Like you,
I
Lori, have this problem. Phone tree's never going to help you with that, but the AI could. Oh, you have a problem. You need to change your flight. I just changed it for you. You're all set.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I'll tell you who I think actually has an incredibly robust chat system, which is amazing to me that they even got to this place, is Amtrak. I actually never thought Amtrak would ever be good at this because of their past experience. And I've never been overly impressed with a lot of the way that they've done things. But I did have a reason to call them recently to change a train. And it was amazing how smooth it was. And it was a total chatbot experience the whole way. They changed my train. I mean, it was, I couldn't have had a better experience if I were talking to a human. It was, it was amazing. Well, unless I was talking to somebody that was really pleasant and nice and we were, then having a conversation.
That's interesting. Yeah. Maybe we should get Amtrak on here, talk about it.
Perhaps.
So I'll go with my last prediction, kind of on the back of that. I think this is the year we're going to start talking about, just to wind Bruce up further. AI is actually being better at most tasks than humans. And I think we're actually probably already there. It's just that we haven't built to it yet. I think AI can already do most things better, most sort of digital tasks better than most humans. There's a discussion around AGI, right? Artificial general intelligence, which it can do all tasks as well as the best humans kind of thing. Whether that's here this year or next year or in 5 years, who knows? But I think we're already at the place where we're going to start really looking at ourselves as humans, and we're going to start having issues because we are no longer the top dog in the world. And we're going to have task by task by task that we suddenly realize that we're certainly not the best at making decisions on so many things. and I've been probably too into like cognitive bias stuff this year, but the more I look into that, the more I realize that we're actually really bad at making decisions and really bad at looking at data and using that to make good decisions. And that's what the AI is good at. So I think the more that we start incorporating it into our lives, it's just going to get a little bit scary, and that we start thinking how sort of inferior we are versus this magic tool that we've built.
It's interesting because what I'm starting to see now, if you know, obviously there's so many different people you can follow to get information on AI. And what I'm seeing a lot more lately are people that are presenting a list of jobs that probably won't be touched by AI in the next year or two or whatever. So if you're looking for a job that actually is going to, you know, where you're not going to have to worry about losing it, where should I look? People are starting to really think about that, you know, and even like these kids coming out of college, they're thinking like, well, you know, what should I focus on that isn't going to be replaced by an AI agent? So that's already part of life right now, really.
Well, I got a kid coming out of college, and he's very clear that, based on what he wants to do, how AI can help him and making sure he understands. But where it's his thought process and his intuition and what he understands about the world is what's going to lead to that job. But he better know how to use AI to fulfill, to fill in all the gaps of information he doesn't currently have, right? And I think those are the kids that are going to be really successful. And it's a real interesting discussion going on in universities right now. Should kids be allowed to use AI when they study? And there's some professors that say no, and there's some that say sure. It's like in 2005, should we be able to use the web to study? Like, why not? It's there, it's a tool. So yeah, and
I do worry that, and maybe this is the wrong way of looking at it, but I do worry that it's kind of going to dumb down, you know, the people.
yeah, but
Because, you know, once upon a time, you had to write a letter to somebody. You had to give it some thought. You really had to put your head behind it and spend time really thinking about what you're going to say. Now you just put everything right into ChatGPT, all your thoughts, bam, there comes a letter. It looks great. What's the point of like knocking your head against the wall trying
because
to
the point is knowing what that, having the theory about what that letter should have in it. And you can't just rely on ChatGPT to write that letter, or it's going to be a standardized letter. But you need to know what the right questions are and what the right prompts need to be, and then read it.
That's true. That is true, Bruce, for sure. But it isn't as hard. That's the easy part in some ways, right? That sometimes people just have a really tough time putting their thoughts down on paper and having it come out to be something that actually is enjoyable to read or whatever. But I do think that in one way it's going to make us smarter because there's more information available. And it's also more easily digestible because ChatGPT and other LLMs have a great way of breaking down information so that you can understand it. So I feel like in one way it's going to make us smarter, and another way it's going to make us, I don't know, there'll be a bit of a trade-off there.
Time will tell. Time will tell.
Yeah, and I think that's right, and but I think the thing that hasn't really quite happened yet is it making decisions. So we already trust Excel to make decisions on maths, right? We don't claim to be good at doing maths in Excel, so we're sort of asking Excel to make a decision on adding up these 562 numbers for us. Whereas now we can ask Excel, hey, I've just come out of college. This is my degree. This is where I live. These are my choices. It's going to be able to make decisions if you want. And it's not going to make decisions, but it's going to say, these are the top 3 choices based on all the job titles that you gave me. This is the one you should choose. And it might not say that, but it's going to suggest things. And we're going to realize that, hang on a second, this is making better decisions than I can. And we're going to hand over decision making to the AI. more and more, which may make us less able to make future decisions because we stop learning how to make them, and we start contracting out the decision-making process to our phones on all kinds of stuff, potentially.
Well, leaving it there, that was interesting and a good kickoff for season 3 for sure. I did want to get into a different topic that we'll push to another show, which is SEO, and just what is going to happen with SEO this year, right? What's going to happen to Google's share? Is it going to go down but come back up once they've figured it out with Gemini or whatever? I think that's just going to be really interesting. And I heard a bunch of different phrases starting to be used. You probably know them all, Christian, for SEO.
SEO is dead.
Sorry?
SEO is dead. Is that
Well,
one of-
that's one phrase. That's not what I was thinking of. I don't know if I'm going to find my notes right here, but just all kinds of different
Well,
terms.
why don't we kick this into the next episode, or to a episode to come up soon, because it is an interesting topic.
So next show, depending, might be on SEO. Yeah.
Sounds good.
Future of SEO, at least for the next 6
let's get somebody on that I mean, I'm sure we know a couple of people.
Yeah. All right. You want to wrap it up, Christian?
Yeah, that was a long one, guys, but interesting discussion. Lots of topics there. I was going to say we should do scores, but we've gone on too long, so no scores. So take for it what you will, and talk to us in the comments of wherever we post it. And thanks for the first episode of this season, guys.
All right. Welcome
Cheers.
to 2025.